is Bola Tinubu. He is the incumbent, former founder of the APC, which is the party in power today. And as for him, he's been a governor of Lagos twice, and he is credited with raising the state's revenue. They think that he can replicate that success as president. So far, many of the polls have him in the lead. Then there is Peter Obi, former governor of Amambra. Now, this is a man who used to be the running mate to Abubakar. But now he is the leader of the Labour Party, and he has a large following among the youth of Nigeria, who, as usual, you can imagine, are disenchanted with Africa's, typical governance structure. People really thought he would be the cause of an upset in this election. Hasn't happened yet. But people are talking, aren't they?
Yes, there's a post we put about people's observations. Do you think popular candidate Peter Obi still stands a chance? Because there's a lot of buzz around the man right from the beginning. The Akosia says the figures I have been seeing coming from Channels TV and Arise News seem like INEC don't rob him off. Or if the figures are genuine, then it seems Nigerians are happy with the insecurity and sufferings they are actually going through. Cause it tire me. I cannot even can. And Yao Inti says he was undoubtedly elected by them, but it's clear they will not give him their support. When Nigerians have been complaining about INEC's performance in these elections, I was disappointed to hear President Mahama and McMenu praise the INEC. Well, Duku Nyansa said, it looks like Tinubu is winning for me, a Ghanaian here. I'm quite scared because if Obi doesn't win, we won't know what will happen. Let me be coming to Ghana anyway. Henry says he's the right person to transform Nigeria, but that country is divided on tribal basis. They being a minority in terms of population and its distribution will take a divine miracle for him to win this election. And Nibago says it will take a miracle for Obi to win. Per the results coming in, I must say I'm really disappointed in Nigerians. And okay, so this one from Son of Jacob. He will be president after many months in court. Very optimistic that this may have to go through a court and all of that will happen. Cecil Kwabna says he's supposed to win, but they are rigging it for the old man. And that's what Cecil Kwabna is saying. Awuche Ama says it all depends on how the Labour Party monitor the results and its collation from each polling station or unit. The youth, they are behind Obi. That's what he's saying here. That's Awiche. And Oche Thomas, yes, Peter Obi will win hands down. The best effort from Tinubu and Atiku will move the election to a runoff, and Peter Obi will still sail through with a big win. And Daniel Champo has this thought too. Good politics is not done on social media. This is a clear reflection that the MPP is winning 2024 general election. That's what Daniel Champon is actually saying there. And Dre says right from the get-go, he doesn't stand a chance. All he's enjoying is social media hype. To stand a chance in a country like Nigeria, you must enjoy full support or 80% support of 4 out of the 6 geopolitical zones we have in Nigeria. He doesn't have that kind of support. And he's talking about the main areas that really contribute massive votes. So mostly the election, they'll divide it into 4. The main, yes. And when you have the history of winning in those areas, it's very easy for you to sail through anyway. I believe he does, even though the system, INEC and the facts, they are trying to mar his chances there. This is Ken Isaiah. And Kujo Walker Roland says, if only they don't engage and change the figures in favor of the other. But our lovely nigga, Niger, okay, everything is possible. Evans Mensah, Kofi Mensah, Evans Mensah said, Peter will win. John SMS, I thought it was Evans Mensah tweeting that. It is what it is. That's what Crystal says. And Sapon Kuma says, nah, he won't win. Yeah. And Sim says, no, maybe the next election. And Taste, that's also another thought coming up strongly, that this is a good start for him. Anyway. He won't win this year, but he has been prepared for the next 4 years. This is what Taste is saying. And you want me to read more? There are more than 50 or so comments on that thread. I should hold on. Oh, yeah.
2 more.
2, okay. Now, Robert Leslie Markey said, Ghanaian elections and politics has taught me never to put trust in any politician who parade themselves as patriots. We thought Mahama was a young blood, so he'd understand. But Poto. Then came Nana, whom we thought would be our savior. Well, that expression, I know the other ones, but this IYKYK.
If you know, you know.
Ah, well. It never crossed my mind, really, really.
That's
why I've never purported to be
You can never
useful.
be the Peter Obi of this show.
Yes.
Yeah, you are too old.
Yeah. Okay. Some more of the messages. Laurie says he won the elections, but the rigged system will make Tinubu the president. They keep robbing Peter Obi's vote for Tinubu. Whatever is happening in Nigeria is an eyesore. Broad daylight thievery at its best. This is, and she's shaking the head to Laurie with that one where, and Saint Mercy says, "Aye beans."
Oh, we're ready. Well, I mean, it's not over.
Yeah,
it's not over. That's for sure. But I think the early indications are quite surprising for those who expected Peter Obi to have a strong showing.
Coffee in your cup and Joy on the set. The Super Morning Show is always the best bet on Joy 99.7 FM.
You're welcome back. It's the Super Morning Show on Joy. And of course, we are your official station for all updates and analysis of the Nigerian election. Our head of the politics desk. Is it political desk or politics desk?
What do you want to say?
Here at Joy FM, head of our political desk, Evans Mensah joins us this morning. I derive special pleasure from waking him up earlier than he
I know you do.
Yeah, it's good to have you though. Thanks for coming. Joining us over the phone to bring us all the way up to date, Kayla Megwa is from Channels TV in Nigeria, our partner network in Nigeria. And Samuel Koku Anyidoho is an ECOWAS observer of the Nigerian elections. He joins us on the phone as well. Kayla and Mr. Anyidoho, good morning to you both.
Good morning.
All right, if you don't mind, I'll start with you, Kayla. We would love to get a general idea of where things stand right now. We are still some time away from an official announcement, but how are the early polls indicating the positions of the frontrunners?
So it's too early to say anything at all. Like we've been saying since the beginning of this election, this is one of those elections where you really cannot say who is going to win, and it's a strange dynamic. It's rare for Nigerians, even journalists, myself especially, who's covered other elections, to be able to not, know where things are going, 2 days after, because usually we've been running kind of like a two-party system for a very long time, but this time we're seeing the third force, and we're seeing this third force actually make a difference. From the results that we've been hearing coming from the states, of course, we did something different with this election. We used the BVAS system. And the BVAS is bimodal voter accreditation system. The results were sent to the INEC portal immediately from the elections. But what happened was INEC was explaining yesterday that the server had a little bit of a problem, so it was slow to receive a lot of those, a lot of that data. We heard observer groups yesterday, call out INEC for that, saying, look, you told us that you were going to have a backup server. What are you talking about? Why is it impossible for us to see the results coming in from the states? As of, I don't know about this morning, but when I slept off yesterday, it was just Ekiti State, just one state that had its result on that BVAS, on the INEC portal rather.
Wow. So
it's a very strange dynamic. Just one state. I don't know where it's gone to this morning. I hear that the collation centers are supposed to open again. The National Collation Center is supposed to open at 11 a.m. this morning, so we can find out what really is happening. But, we really can't tell. We're seeing strongholds being affected. In Kano, for instance, the MNPP doing amazingly there against the All Progressives Congress. The NMPP candidate is Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, and we're seeing him, gather a lot of momentum in Kano. In Lagos, we're seeing sort of like a competition between the All Progressives Congress and the Labour Party. So, especially in strongholds that were known to be, Bola Ahmed Tinubu strongholds in Lagos, we're seeing the Labour Party do very well in those places. So it's a lot that's happening. It's too close for us to be able to tell anything. We cannot say for a fact who's doing better than the other. Right. It's one of those elections where we actually have to wait till the end to see exactly how things have turned out.
Are Nigerians waiting though? What is their mood? Are they patient? Or are you seeing
anxious.
Some agitation?
The word is anxious. Nigerians are anxious. That is the definition. In fact, many journalists, myself included, what we're doing right now is trying to get people to calm down. Protect your mental health. I actually put up a post on my Facebook yesterday. I said, the next few days are going to be hectic. So you need to protect your mental health. You need to get some water, drink something, make sure that you are calm, and be ready for the shockers that you're going to get. I think this is going to be the election that shocks Nigeria. We have no idea what the outcome is going to be. We cannot predict where this is going. We do not know who's going to do well and who's going to do poorly. What we're seeing really in the results that are coming in from the states, strongholds are being divided, and that is what this third force has done. It's been able to, change that monopoly. Things that we expected, we're seeing them being chipped off gradually and largely. So it's one of those elections where we have to wait. We just cannot say anything about it.
Are people gathering around information centers, collation centers and so forth, or are they mainly staying at home and monitoring through?
The collation centers are heavily guarded. You can't go there. I don't have a pass into the collation center myself. I don't have one, because it's for they were given specific numbers to stations, and because I was a field reporter for the election, we have other staff who are now in the collation center. The collation centers are heavily guarded. You can't go in. That's the National Collation Center right here in Abuja. You can't go in. You can't go there. You can't even loiter. You can't even be around there. But we have journalists and security all inside those collation centers, inside that collation center, the national one. Another complaint that we heard from civil society organizations and election observers yesterday was that the state collation centers, many of the states decided to change the venue of the collation centers without telling the election observers, without letting stakeholders know. So we have a situation where we have election observers who are complaining about not having access into collation centers, especially at the state level. So that's something that a lot of people, at least two civil society organizations that I went to yesterday had this exact complaint. Why did you change the venue of the collation center without telling election observers? Is there a reason you didn't want us to be there? What's really going on? So we have that happening as well.
Stay with us. There's a lot more we can learn from you. But I want to bring in Mr. Samuel Koku Anyidoho, no stranger to our show. He happens to be serving as an ECOWAS observer during this Nigerian election. Mr. Anyidoho, tell us about your observations. How free and how fair have these elections unfolded before your eyes?
Well, thank you very much, Kojo. Greetings to everyone's reaching yesterday night and everybody else. Now, let me just say and state for the fact that I'm happy that you have my sister on the other side who works with you from here. So she will be able to give you the kind of analysis that she's giving. I will stick to technicalities for the purposes of this interview. When I'm back home and maybe I've dropped the cap I'm wearing now, we can go into other details. But for now, let's just say, let me give you the technical aspect of what's going on in Nigeria.
Sure.
So, Kojo, Nigeria has zoned the election out into 6 major zones. You have the North Central Zone, which is Benue, Kogi, Kwara area. You have the Northeast, which is Adamawa, Bauchi area. You have the northwest, which is Kaduna, Katsina area. Southwest, which is Lagos, Oyo, Ogun area. Southeast, which is Abia, Anambra. And then south-south, which is Akwa Ibom, Delta, and the Bayelsa region. So 6 electoral zones, 18 political parties. Now, interestingly, they have the 50+1, just as we also have back home in Ghana.
Yeah.
But interestingly, in their case, within that 50+1 is some other interesting configuration. Now, if you get 50+1, within that 50+1, you must have at least 25% in at least 2/3 of the 36 states. Let me repeat. So you get 50+1 as Kojo Yankson, but after your 50+1, you must be able to satisfy this other equation. You must get 25% in at least 2/3 of the 36 states. And now 2/3 of the 36 is 24. So that makes it very interesting. So if you bring it into the Ghanaian equation, if you get 50+1, then out of the 16 regions, you must get 2/3 of the 16 regions before you can be declared the president winner of the elections. Now, also statistically, another interesting statistic is that per the population census and per the voters registered here in Nigeria, you have more men than women.
Right.
More male than female. So that is what is happening here in Nigeria. Then, when it comes to another interesting thing that we have noticed is that in terms of the involvement of security,
Yeah.
it is done to the extent that at the very highest level, when the INEC chairman, Professor Yakubu, is having any form of press conference, you will have the Inspector General of Police sit next to him. At the various levels also, you find the same thing. So assuming the governor of Oyo State also the INEC boss of Oyo State wants to address the press, the Commissioner of Police of Oyo State will sit next to him. I mean, that's the extent to which they've given police and security visibility to the election year in Nigeria. So preliminary, this is the comment I can make.
Okay. So what can you tell us about how things unfolded on election day? As you can imagine, with any election, there were some reports of anomalies. But in general, how would you characterize the free and fair nature or otherwise of the elections?
Well, when we arrived, INEC gave us all the necessary briefing, and my sister on the other side will attest to the fact that INEC, has been transparent up to this point in terms of release of information. On D-Day, which was on Saturday, going around, generally, it looks like fine. Also, here in Nigeria, they start at 8:30 and stop at 2:30.
Okay.
It's not like back home in Ghana where we do 7 to 5. Here it's 8:30 to 2:30. That's the voting period. But of course, like home, if you are in the queue before 2:30, then you will still be able to vote. But otherwise, the official voting period, the window, is 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. In the afternoon.
Right.
So going around, that is what happened. I personally and my team, we found ourselves in Oyo State, that is Ibadan, Oyo area. And as you are also hearing in the media space, in certain places or most places, materials did not seem to arrive on time. But eventually, when the officers arrived, well, in the places that we observed or I observed, there was no shortage of material. once they arrived, things unfolded according to plan. Of course, interestingly also, like my sister, your colleague said, is the introduction of the BVAS machine, the biometric verification assisted system, which sped up the process. And in many areas that we visited, you would hear voters actually applaud the system in making comparison to the voting patterns of the past, where it was much more cumbersome. Of course, our own briefing here also, the introduction of BVAS allowed for more people to get interested in the registration process prior to the elections. And so you had over 95 million registered voters for the just ended general elections of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So that's what happened on Saturday. And like your sister said earlier on, everybody's still waiting with bated breath. Then again also, interestingly, the electoral law as passed prior to this election states categorically, Kojo, that no entity, no individual, nobody has the right to call any election or put out any results unless that result is picked from the official INEC portal or declared by INEC. You go against that law and you can even end up in jail. Yeah, so it's that strict. Wait, INEC will put out the results, take it from there, then you can run with it. But don't run with anything prior to what INEC will put out.
That's fascinating stuff. Now, you talked about some delays with materials and so forth. Peter Obi has complained that in some polling stations, the polling card was not properly printed, and so his picture or the logo of his party was missing. Did you observe any such administrative errors?
Well, I told you before the interview started, I put out something, but as I speak as an official ECOWAS observer, I'm unable to put an opinion deeply on issues. But yes, as the news unfolds and as we are all hearing, so that is nothing out of order. Yes, political parties are making certain general complaints about A, B, C, D, E, F, but that is well within the ambit of INEC to manage. I cannot speak deeply to that.
We've already learned a lot from Kayla and Mr. Anyidoho. Very interesting how it's unfolding this year. Closer than an election has ever been since 1999. And lots and lots of anxiety as people await the outcomes. A suspicion, as usual, as you can imagine with any election. But at the same time, people hopeful of a very new and different outcome. Evans?
Yeah, I mean, it's largely because of the emergence of that third force, the Labour Party, led by Peter Obi, which has put the cat among the pigeons a bit in Nigeria. So the APC, PDP are now having a situation where, for the first time in a long time, in 24 years, you have a situation where you have a third force that, by the way, the interesting thing about Obi is that it's not like he's really an establishment candidate. He is a serial carpet crosser. So that's why I find it interesting why he's sort of become such. Nigerians have been in search of a savior for a very long time, some sort of a messiah, and why I find it very interesting why he's been couched in this messiah mode, this fresh phase candidate, because just as early as last year May, he was running to be the presidential candidate for the main opposition, PDP. And then he resigned just before the primaries. Many thought that he just knew he was gonna lose, and so he dropped out. But that's why we're seeing. That's why Kayla was talking about, why it's become almost impossible to determine who's going to win this particular race, and it's very interesting.
He's been a running mate as well.
He has been, yes. He's been four times. Four times he's crossed carpets from one political party to the other. So you could say he's a political opportunist. But this is working for him. His age has been a factor. But it's also one of the things I find that was interesting, that possibly accounts for why he's become such a storm sweeping through and tearing down, assumptions and norms in Nigeria, is because among the two other leading candidates, Tinubu and Atiku Abubakar, he is possibly the only, and by the way, he also was a governor.
Yeah,
he's possibly the only person who's held public office before who you would struggle to find a corruption tag around, right? A major scandal. That's not to say that he hasn't been caught up in scandals himself, but in comparison to the other two, people struggle to sort of hang something around him. So, for example, his name popped up in the Pandora Papers. That revelation of how rich people in Africa were stacking their wealth in offshore accounts to avoid taxes. His name popped up there. He was also been accused when he was the governor that he gave a contract to a company that he had interest in. But the point about that is, and the evidence shows, post his departure as a governor, that entity has shown, significant profit. So it's yielded the outcomes that everybody expected. So that is why the youth have found him very refreshing, because then you're comparing him to the others, and corruption is a big deal in Nigeria. But also, it's this emergence of a group that call themselves the coconut head generation. And they call themselves coconut head generation because Nigeria, they are very proud about the fact that they don't listen to Foko. As we say in our local parlance, Nigeria's local parlance is also the king on the streets. But these are young people, 30 below, who just want to tear down the establishment. And they describe themselves coconut head because nothing goes through our heads. It's what we believe is what we are going to do, and those same people are behind the NSAS protest that brought a lot of change in the police in Nigeria. That is the group that has mobilized for him on social media. So, and they're very rowdy, they're very, vociferous, and the activism is infectious. And that is the vehicle he's used to mobilize. So there's a lot of things happening to him and around him that it's sort of become a tsunami sweeping across. And I find parallels between that and Ghana, right? Because of that background coming from the NSAS protest movement of young people mobilized largely on social media and others. You come to Ghana, for example, we're now talking about the mobilization that has come on the back of the domestic debt restructuring. We've had to fix the country, etc. There was a time that people thought fix the country possibly could become that movement around which somebody could emerge, and then one person could emerge and then become a third force. So that for those who want to look at that will say Ghana could probably learn from that. How can we get one person supported by this group of activists, young activists, to then challenge the MPP and the NDC? Is one of the things that, for example, that for me I found interesting.
And Ray, let's now let's take further this idea of the parallels, okay? Because there are many. We have Tinubu, who is let's call him an incumbent candidate, part of the establishment, one of the founding members of the APC. Someone who is seen as really the poster boy of the established government, but he has in some instances dissociated himself from some of the decisions that President Buhari has made, some of the failures of the incumbent, party. So he has drawn a line between his own vision and the vision of the party that has held power for the last 2 terms. Now, let's draw a parallel. Let's connect that to Ghana. Is that something that is politically possible in this country? If someone emerges as a front runner for the NPP, bearing in mind that there is an 8-year, a 2-term government that's coming to an end, how easy will it be for the new face or the new flag bearer to divorce himself from what appears to be failures of the NPP, the 2-term NPP government?
Because Tinubu is not like a minister, or of course, I mean, nobody will dismiss the fact that since 2014, that party's history has everything to do with him right from the beginning. Now, there is also a very interesting dynamic there. He was compelled to take that position. Tinubu's earlier campaigning strategy was to just tell the people that it's my time. He was compelled to descend on the issues because it became quite too obvious, at least for what they were putting on social media. The strategy changed when Peter Obi and co started saying that, no, this is not a time for any profligate. I own the position. It's my natural right to be successor, to come into the position. You need to tell us what your ideas are, how different you will be from the current leader, especially when your age is around his end and you think or act in some ways just like him. So he really went greater lengths to try and say things that are very different from what the current president believes in, move in directions that people think, okay, no, he can even be different. Then he brought in his history of being governor himself and the things he has done, and people did not know that he's originally an accountant anyway, and the things that he can do in some of these positions. He then, even music, the choice of music they play at their event took a very youthful turn, because they feared that a certain younger generation was buying into a different idea. Even though, if you looked at the history of Nigerians voting and how sometimes they divide this north-south, and South Ghana is a massive amount of votes, the religion throws in some element, and his other decision of even choosing another Muslim on his ticket became quite controversial. But he then needed to push a message that I'm different, because the younger people were pushing something different, which is the Peter that they were talking about. Would that work here? Would that be any candidate? And that's perhaps the biggest difficulty. I've already heard Alan Chamartin talking about our reduced government size, to individual bondholders should be exempted, and talking about even arrogance in government. That's not the kind of government we want. They're not going to be people who talk and not act. Clearly, he stated very clear-cut indications that I am seeking to do something different, because you may, whether you like it or not, you are more likely to carry the burden of the government, because it's on this track record you are going to campaign. But to be able to separate the track record from the other liabilities that come with being in government is what everybody is trying to do. Will they work? It depends on what you say. It depends on the trust that people have in you as an individual, because people sometimes vote for individuals, regardless of their political background. So the party may send a signal generally about how governance has been in the last 8 years. But if you are contesting the election and you say, yes, I've been part of this, but when I become leader, I'll act differently. I was not in charge fully. I contributed to a team, and I cannot, by collective responsibility, come out and be saying I thought differently about some of the issues that are happening today. Now I have the opportunity that when you trust me, I can do something different. It's always a difficult one. It is easier when you are not active in government, or you are not a minister, or you are not seen as a major decision maker. It is very difficult when you're vice president, when you're a minister. In some of these positions, it is very, very difficult for anybody to believe you that you can do something very different. I think that's where the difference between the Nigerian dynamic and the Ghanaian is supposed to be. How would anybody navigate that? Maybe if you have your message, that is very sincere. That's not opportunistic. And that's one of the accusations that were leveled against Peter Obi right through. That, you see, you can't just wriggle your way through and only accept the good deals of a previous government and not move into other areas anyway.
All right. It's all about the Nigerian election. And look, our analysis cannot skip the big issue. Age. Okay, it is part of the appeal. Not that Peter Obi is particularly young, but his direct opponents are particularly old. And as a result of this, the people of Nigeria in this election have certainly made age or youthfulness a part of the issues. And some of the groups that have rallied behind Peter Obi, the third force, have certainly had a certain youthful common denominator. Kayla Megwa is with Channels TV in Nigeria. Kayla, what can you tell us about the age factor in this year's election?
Okay. Let me go back to the beginning. Now, this election has the highest number of new entrants into the process. We had over 13 million new voters, and 70% of these new voters are young people. Now, I was listening to the analysis going on the studio not too long ago, and he's absolutely correct. What happened is that this generation, and he's correct, I call the coconut head generation. In Nigeria, if they say you have a coconut head, you know you don't care. You're stubborn. So this generation have become interested in what's going on in their country. They've become interested in seeing that these corrupt practices stop. They want the impunity to stop. They want a nation that works for them. Remember, this coconut head generation grew up in a country where things didn't work, where corruption was the order of the day, where they weren't able to access basic amenities, and many of them turned to crime. But a lot of them did not turn to crime. So now they're now looking at the country and saying, okay, what's wrong with our home and how do we fix it? So that's the thing about this generation. That's the reason why you have a lot of young people interested in this process. Now, these young people have seen a lot of old politicians who have been a part of this problematic system for a very long time. So Peter Obi seems like a better option for them. Peter Obi is not necessarily young, and he's also a part of the establishment. He used to be a former governor of Anambra State. He was named in the Panama Papers. There are a lot of issues. However, he seems like a lesser evil to a lot of these young people. So he has ridden that wave. He's taken that wave and soared to the top of it. So that's what's happening. That's actually what the story is. And then in the run-up to the election, we've seen a lot of things happen during the campaign. And when these things happen, the young people say, this is too old. This is too old. We want something new. We want something fresh. And Peter Obi knows how to talk to young people, So when he talks, it's almost as though he's speaking from their perspective. So we've seen that play a very vital role in this election.
Have the other candidates, the other frontrunners, Tinubu, Abubakar, have they attempted to tap into this youth, this vein of youth? Have they attempted to adjust their message to somehow include the coconut head generation?
Yes, they have. They did try. If not the young people, making young adverts, talking about the plans for the youth, plans for those who are even engaging in crime, we're going to do this for the young generation, we're going to do that for the young generation. They have. May have resonated with some, maybe it didn't resonate with all of them, but they actually have tried to do that.
Well, I mean, the heavy presence of youth suggests a lot of political communication across social media. How representative is that social media cohort of the general electorate? How much of the general electorate of Nigeria is on social media?
That is the question of the day. Because it's an ongoing conversation. A lot of talk is on social media. How many Nigerians are on social media? Broadband penetration in Nigeria is less than 70%. So we have over 30% of the population who do not even have access to the internet.
Right.
Not of being active on social media. You know. So and then, you know, with the cash crunch, we've seen that a lot of Nigerians are even unbanked. Unbanked. They don't even have bank accounts. Many of them in rural areas. So we know that there's a lot of young people on social media, a lot of the government-led generation are on social media, but it's not all Nigerians. It's not a representation of all of Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians do not have access to the internet. A lot of Nigerians live in very poor areas. A lot of Nigerians depend on money, cash, that they make daily. You know? So while we have a lot of young people on social media, we have a lot of representation on social media, it's not necessarily a representation of Nigeria's entire population.
That's important. Kayla, I want to say a big thank you for giving us such a clear picture of the story behind the story of the Nigerian election. We appreciate you. I'm sure we'll talk more in the future.
You're welcome.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, look, again, I'm interested in the parallels. All right. In 2024, I don't know what sort of age disparity we are going to see between candidates, whether it will be huge or not. But one thing is clear, the demographics of the electorate are going to be not too far off what we've seen in Nigeria. Lots and lots of first-time voters will be added on, especially if the National Identification Authority is able to sort out their problems and get everybody a Ghana card.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we already have a very, very youthful population. So again, let's talk issues of political communication. What role will social media play? How how will candidates be seeking to appeal to this all-important youthful group here in Ghana? And in fact, has it worked in Nigeria? Maybe we'll start from there and then compare it to Ghana.
Yeah, I mean, so the only reason why we have a third force is because of that coconut head generation, and I like they call themselves that, but there's also a group that also follow Peter Obi, call themselves the Obedience, and they
I see what they've done there.
exactly, so it's OBI, and then they've added the rest to it, to the Obedience, and they are very aggressive on social media. And it's only the reason why he's in third place now. Raymond has pulled up the latest results from INEC. It looks, and you asked that question about, and it's about, is it working? It's working to the extent that it's giving the two major parties something else to worry about. But if you really look at the trends, it appears he will still lose elections. In fact, one of the biggest campaigns against him by the two main parties was that if you vote for Obi, you are wasting your vote. Because he would come in third place, definitely, but he will not win elections, right? And so you look at that, and because elections is all about winning. So the young voters, very aggressive on social media, mobilizing, and Kayla make the point. How many of them are on social media in terms of the voters who are actually going to cast their votes? There is a small minority of them on social media, but of course they make they have a lot of following, and so they drive the traffic on social media. It gets into media. We are interested in stuff like that. But if you go to the north, the villages in the north, and very poor places in Nigeria, where there's no internet access, where because of violence they haven't managed to put up an infrastructure that is working, then of course you're losing ground there. That is what I guess will be a factor that those who will be running elections locally in Ghana will look at. How many Ghanaians are on social media and on Twitter, right? And I come back to the point about what we've seen. One of the most effective social media mobilizations we've seen in our time, at least in my time, 40 years, has been Fix the Country.
Fix the Country, yeah.
Right? And they try to sort of replicate that on the streets. So to see, in other words, this very powerful social media force, can you turn that into boots on the ground? They did a few protests. Would you say that the numbers that they pulled on social media hit the streets? You wouldn't say that. I mean, you wouldn't say that the thousands and the trends that we saw, the Twitter will tell you how many people were reading, the 25,000 people, etc. And they're trending. But yet when they called and they did protest, you wouldn't see that translate into people actually on the ground. And you look at that and you wonder if you have the same mobilization in an election. Would that translate into actual votes? Would they go and queue and vote? It's a big question. It's a big unknown. But the Fix the Country, I guess, phenomenon told you a story of what might happen, right? So, but that's the thing, though. It's also the bandwagon theory, right? Because even if I'm not on social media, but we are beginning to have conversations on mainstream media about what is happening on social media. And the guy who doesn't have internet is hearing about, this, explosion of following on social. It maybe might convince a few people that that's a right. So the outcome of the Nigerian election will be very key for people, because the politics in Nigeria is very, very similar to what we have. The issues that they are facing are very, very
economy, corruption,
etc.
security.
I mean, the north-south divide, it's there.
Yeah.
So for me, it's going to be interesting. And next year, I mean, John Mahama is 64, I believe, right? Bawumia is 59. Alan Chemanteng, I don't know. Alan Chemanteng is possibly the oldest of the
60s.
Of the lot. We should check that. But which of these two?
Don't forget Kennedy Ajapong
and the others who are in. I mean,
Dufour,
of course, and others who also believe that they can win. But that's the thing about Dufour, right? People say that he's possibly too old there.
67, Chairman.
Okay. So there you have it. I mean, so they are all in the Tinubu range, right? The Peter Obi range.
Yes.
Peter Obi is 61. So John 64, 69. But Bawumia 59. So that's going to be an interest. I don't know what the youth looking at Nigeria think they can do locally.
Yeah, I mean, I think the social media conversation is so relevant. That's what I've got my mind on right now. Whether or not it's a barometer of any value to a politician.
Popularity.
First of all, I mean, in Ghana, we've got between 20 and 30% of us on social media. That's of the whole country.
Yeah.
When you take the electorate alone, then that's an even smaller percentage. So can we fairly say that if people are making noise about someone on social media, that gives that person any real chance on the ground?
Yes, any real chance, yes. But as to whether the chance is as massive as you would expect it to be, a real chance here will be that he'll be popular. He would actually, traditional media may pick up the candidates. See, there are some candidates, no matter what they do, without the push of social media, they won't get traditional media to push them. You get my point? So their ideas will never be heard by traditional media. There are people that no matter what they say elsewhere, you never invite them for a conversation till the election is done. That kind of conversation can start from social media. So you are compelled, and Evans Spencer is compelled to say that no. I've seen all the videos. The guy is getting all the attention elsewhere. So let me also invite him to come and have a conversation on this matter. So it's that's what makes it interesting. To be fair, it is not the main barometer. You will not win merely because you are popular on social media, but it's a complementary factor, which you cannot dismiss. So if you dismiss it, you may be seen to be extremely unpopular if you do not deploy social media to the use that. You see, there is this study also that suggested that the candidates spent a lot in the last election on social media, some thousands of dollars. Why they had to do so, even though they are very popular on the ground and they have been contested elections for 3 or 4 times, as we know it to be, because without that complementary element from social media, even your own people may be thinking you're not doing enough. It's very possible for a single post which is boosted to reach 1 million people. It's very difficult for you to get that same million audience in any rally across the country, no matter where you bust them from. So a single post can be as effective as the rally that you put up and the people that you got there. In any case, I don't know if you think that ordinary people really walk to rallies nowadays like they used to do in times past.
But I guess the difference is in effectiveness. So if you have a rally of 10,000 people and they are all cheering for you, if you open a ballot, it's likely that you will get, 8,000 votes out of the 10,000. But if you share a post to 1 million people and you're able to get 1,000 votes out of that million, that's a result.
No, I get your point. The point being made here is that it complements what you are doing elsewhere. You cannot rely 100% on it. A candidate generated and brought up from social media cannot and will not be able to win election in of itself, because you have to actually convince my grandmother, who really has no time for social media. You have to convince other people who are not really into that space too. And sometimes, unless you have transitioned from social media to traditional media, some people still have some doubts about the seriousness with which you are pursuing your campaign and all of the things that come with that. So yes, a force, but I'm not sure it has reached the level where you recall how a lot of write-up was done about the Arab Spring and how social media there's a write-up called Democratization of Influence was a very key factor in there. We've not reached that point. Social media can galvanize people to go for a demonstration, but may not be able to get them all to get you to win an election.
We literally have a minute each, and this is what I'd like us to spend it on. Third force. Could Ghana ever have a third force to MPP NDC? And what would be, in your estimation, the closest to that in 2023?
We could, but it would be a
Not
challenge. Because if you look at the Obi factor, a few things, apart from he had to earn the support of the coconut head generation and the obedience by a few things. And I'll list them and see if there's any individual in this country who possibly could also say I have those same qualities. So he's known to be very frugal. He very frugal to the point where his 30-year-old son wanted a car. He says he won't buy him the car. His other child is a teacher, right? And in Nigeria, it's rare for you to have a very powerful, rich person, former governor who started as a teacher. It's not a glamorous position. Child wants a car. We've seen people marry and they buy them. So he has that. When he was a governor, he showed, and the records show that he left his position. He left the governorship far more resources than he met it in terms of, because he was very frugal. He managed it very well, and he improved. He invested a lot. In fact, the other point, some people even accused him of investing when people were hungry. When somebody was making a point, one of the people was making a point, why are you investing when I'm hungry? But he thought you need to sacrifice now for the future. So that's one. Corruption. You struggle to pin anything on him. In fact, one of his campaign messages is quote, "We don't pay shishi." We don't pay shishi means we don't pay money. He campaigns vociferously with that phrase. So, and in fact, people suggest that one of the reasons why he dropped out of the race for the PDP was because there was people were just asking him to pay bribe, etc. And he said, "I'm not going to do so." So he drops out of that particular race to go. I mean, that's one of the narratives. Others who say he just knew he was going to lose. But for whatever reason, that corruption was a big deal, right? That he's shown that he's different from the lot. If you look at these three, of course, he's also he positions himself as young. If you look at these three factors that I've mentioned, do you have anybody locally who possibly satisfies these three things I've said, who have shown through action, through deed, that they can do this? And when you can show this, then you then begin to get the support of the so-called the Ghana equivalent of the coconut head generation, and they will support you. But can you say there's anybody locally who currently can show that? I doubt very much.
Integrity, populism. I mean, it's almost clean record, if you want to say it, because the people are not looking for a very clean person. Almost clean record, somebody who's willing to identify,
especially anything tagged.
Yes, massive attack on his integrity in any way. The other point is that he's very easy, and they made the messages he's sending out very easy to understand, very easy to identify with. He's telling you that if I'm your governor, nobody is traveling via air to Lagos to go and attend any event. If you are working, if you are making arrangements, I'm not going to live in a big, what they call it, rented hotel. He's talking about cutting small things that we think is unthinkable in our part of the world. And I'm hearing many of the people who are running for office. In fact, close, very close to that is what Kwabena Japan has been saying about the massive changes we would want to do in government. But you see, the ties makes it a bit difficult.
But he can't be a third focal because he's already part of the
Yes, you see, that's a problem.
Yeah.
The
It will
ties
have to
but
be
not like
someone
somebody who is
run
who
out
either
of them.
breaks away from
That's
them
true.
or
Exactly.
comes from nowhere.
Assuming he was doing that today, that's what I'm saying. The very things he's also saying. It is a thing people want to hear in these times.
Yeah.
That is also driving the kind of policy that many of these people want to push.
Well, listen, however you look at
Bottom line,
it.
that I don't see a third force.
Oh, you are saying you are concluding fully. Maybe it's
Well,
not,
there
it's
isn't
not too late.
There isn't one visible today.
Now,
I
yeah,
guess.
that you can
Yes, but who knows? We've still got a few months to go to the next
Yeah.
election. Who knows what can happen in that time? Third forces usually make late entrances, and so let's see. Well, it wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't be bad. But one thing is for sure: 2023 will not be boring. That election will be memorable. That is for sure. And of course, we will be your election headquarters for the whole of that duration.